everyone, and look, welcome to the very last of our live presenters today. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce our final speaker for today, coming in live from London, and that's Sarah Armstrong-Smith, who's Chief Security Advisor at Microsoft. Clearly, one of the most discussed and most challenging areas of technology right now is data and identity security. There's no question. It's through our press. There's so much commentary in business and in government. So during the presentation, I'd invite you to ask questions of Sarah. She won't answer them through the presentation, but I'll come back to her at the end and perhaps cover off any questions that you might have. I'm delighted really that we have a world authority with us today to share her insights, and it's just after 7 a.m. in the UK. So Sarah, firstly, thanks very much for getting out of bed early for us, and thanks so much for being part of Immersion Plus today. Over to you.
You're welcome, thank you. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here from the UK and enjoying you on this fabulous event today. So I'm going to be talking about operational resilience, a strategy in avoiding digital disruptions. In particular, I'm going to be sharing some insights from Microsoft and how we have adapted and evolved on behalf of our customers during this major incident. So, as we've seen over the last 5-6 months, the whole world has had to adapt to COVID-19. And just recently, our CEO, Satya Nadella, actually observed that we've seen 2 years of digital transformation in just 2 months. And it's not just the fact that we've had to have massive amounts of people working remotely. On top of that, we've actually had to have massive amounts of sharing and collaboration. And just on Teams alone, we've had 75 million concurrent users and 2 billion of active minutes. As many companies, many businesses and individuals all react and all go online simultaneously. So how has Microsoft enabled all of this? Well, the vision of Microsoft sounds quite simple, but it's to empower every individual and every organization on the planet to achieve more. So I want to start with the resilient foundation of Microsoft and how we deliver services to you. So actually, Microsoft operates over 58 regions. Every little blue circle that you see there has either 2 or 3 data centers. And we have 130,000 kilometers of network. So every region, every data center is actually connected through Microsoft's own network. We do not traverse over the internet. And we're reacting to incidents all the time. So the benefit of the cloud, it's giving you that elasticity, that flexibility, and the capacity to expand to these types of incidents. So all the time we're reacting to peaks and troughs for specific customers, seasonal trends, regional incidents, as well as international incidents. And all through that, we are learning, we're adapting to what our customers are telling us. And in fact, Microsoft ourselves have also, not only have we got to keep Microsoft available, we've got to keep all our customers available, and we're also onboarding customers all the time as well. So that resilient foundation also comes with this visibility and security. So not only do we have to have all of that resilience built in, we've also have all of the security, and we've got to enable that across the entire world. So Microsoft actually invests over $1 billion every year into cybersecurity. We've got 3,500 security professionals worldwide, and we're continuing to recruit all the time. Even in the last few months, we have had hundreds of people onboarding, and that actually includes myself. So I actually joined Microsoft in April of this year, just as the UK went into lockdown. So to give you some insights into the depth and breadth of Microsoft security intelligence, as you can see from this slide, we have over 1 billion Azure user accounts. We have telemetry data, we're 8 trillion trillion signals every day that we're receiving. And that's not just from our cloud, that's also from Xbox Live, that's from Bing, that's from Edge. We're also receiving intelligence from all of our interconnected partners as well. And so we have to be able to break through all of that noise, all of that information. And we use massive amounts of machine learning and analytics to what we turn all of this into actionable intelligence. And it's two-way. So as we receive all this telemetry data, all those updates, all that intelligence, we feed straight back through all of our infrastructure, all of our products, and all of that intelligence we make available through our customers and through our partners at the same time. So I just want to reflect on some of the challenges that COVID-19 has provided. And this is feedback from our customers as well as through Microsoft ourselves. And what we've seen is there's a massive spike in the need for remote access to applications. We've seen constraints with VPN capacity, in particular as more and more customers have moved online. Their VPN hasn't been scaled for every single person being able to log on simultaneously, all at the same time, remotely. So a lot of the VPN assumes mobile working, but it also assumes a lot of office working as well. And what we're seeing is a huge amount of traffic that's trying to go through data centers, and that's really starting to slow down some of that performance and productivity that we're seeing with users. And obviously a really big challenge from a cybersecurity perspective is just how much cyber criminals have been exploiting COVID-19. And in particular, over the last few months, our intelligence team have been analysing across the world how the criminals have reacted. And in particular, we've done research across the UK, the USA, and Republic of Korea. And what we've identified that the cyber criminals are reacting to the crisis as it unfolds, in particular breaking news stories as countries go into lockdown. And we're seeing this increase in COVID-19 laws, particularly phishing campaigns. They're reacting, that psychological impact that we're seeing with a lot of people and users. And they're perpetuating to be either from the government, financial services, they're offering loans, they're offering compensation. And in May this year, Microsoft made the decision to openly source all of our intelligence regarding COVID-19, what we're seeing regarding these laws. And just recently, within the last few weeks, Microsoft also did a simultaneous shutdown of multiple domains that had been set up specifically in regards to COVID-19. In addition, we're seeing challenges to onboarding and new and personal devices, particularly many companies were not set up for remote working. They've got multiple desktop users and many users who've never actually worked from home before. We've seen difficulties with enabling security controls and also that support and that transition to remote work. So now I just want to reflect on some of those lessons learned and also how you can enable security and productivity. And the first thing we want to start with is, whenever there's a major crisis, we have to think of the people. And I've been working in business continuity, crisis management for over 20 years, and you will always hear me say, no matter what happens, it's people first, always. So we have to, before we think about technology, before we think about the processes, we actually have to be empathetic to our users, to our customers, to all our citizens who are in this situation. So, this for some of those, this is completely alien, it's completely new experience for them. And it's not just about remote working, it's the challenges they've got around having to work from home, they're having to homeschool, they've got the caring needs, they've got real amounts of stress, potentially they're ill, their family is ill, all of these things combined is something that we really got to be thinking about. So as much as we talk about operational resilience, we've also got to be thinking about the emotional resilience and how we enable wellness and well-being across all of those things. So really what we're really trying to say is here that, in this situation, we've got to be thinking that users have the best intent. You know, however much they're trying to adapt, we've got to be mindful of that. So we've got to be making sure that we continue to share, we continue to collaborate, we continue to train, we enable awareness, all of those things. You know, the users don't have the luxury that they may have had of being able to just walk down to the IT department when they've got a problem, for example. So we've got to make sure that we're always available and we're reacting to whatever's going on from those users' perspective. And that's just a really important area and a really important foundation when we're talking about resilience and that enablement. So now I want to talk about is just 3 core areas, things that we've learned through our customers, through enabling lots of different types of organizations. So this is government, education, healthcare providers, as well as normal private businesses as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is that enabling of remote access to applications. And one of the most critical and most important things that we always recommend is multi-factor authentication. So as we talked about before, you know, there's a real issue with cyber criminals trying to access through phishing or other means, credential theft or credential spray. So we need to make it as hard and as difficult for people to be able to access your services remotely or from wherever they are. And multi-factor authentication is just really critical. So we recommend 100% of the users 100% of the time. On top of that, it's to enable single sign-on. So again, we really want to be thinking about how do we make sure that users aren't trying to think about multiple different passwords. And this is not just on your own infrastructure or on your data centers. This is also thinking about single sign-on access to all of those multi-cloud environments that we've just been talking about. No matter how they're using them, that enablement is really critical. And this is really about the foundation of a zero trust architecture. And really from a Microsoft perspective, it's really simple concept is never trust, always verify, and assume compromise. So, you know, even if, you know, someone has got access into your environment, they may have used perfectly normal credentials, we can't necessarily trust that that is one of your users. So we need to keep thinking about how do we make it as hard and difficult for people to be able to access those services if they are not bona fide users. So some of the concepts around zero trust is also about conditional access. Microsoft are using, again, vast amounts of machine learning, vast amounts of behavior analytics, so we can start to really understand the behaviors of those users and those identities. So it's not just the user itself, it's about how they work and those practices. So do they typically work 9 to 5? Do they typically work from the UK? Do they Australia? What happens if we start to see those credentials being used multiple times? Now, do we need to ask those users to authenticate? Do we actually need to block the access if we're not really sure about what's going on? So all of those things are really critical. And again, just from that enablement perspective, when we're talking about VPN and some of those capabilities, we could talk about split tunneling, and that is rather than trying to have all of your traffic go through all your data centers, it's really about that enablement through the cloud enables you to split the traffic, as you can imagine. So all of your cloud-based infrastructure, all of those applications can go straight out over the internet because we've enabled that trust, we've enabled that single sign-on, and we've got that zero trust architecture built in. So the second thing I want to talk about is how do we manage devices and applications? Now, again, we've got a mixed bag of, you know, some of your users may already have corporate devices, corporate laptops, but actually we've seen a massive shortage of devices and just that enablement and being able to get services out as quickly as possible. So many companies have had to enable bring your own device. That's a mobile phone, their own laptop, for example. And this is really, it's really important that you enable those devices for management. And that's so mobile device management, for example, is a really key area here, that I've been able to control the entire device and be able to lock that device down if there's any compromise or any anomalous behavior. And obviously some of your users might be concerned that you've got a little bit too much access into their devices. So the other option there is actually to have managed application management instead. And that is just where you control just the application layer of those devices. Similarly, we're looking at zero-touch provisioning. You know, people do not have the luxury, as we said, about being able to go to the IT department to collect a new device to take that home. So we're actually seeing lots of opportunities for to have that device, to have that delivered straight from your manufacturer, or straight from your provider, delivered straight to your user, and they can start downloading all of those updates simultaneously. So again, it's just about thinking about how can we enable as much of those users to be as productive as possible. And then the final part is really about protecting corporate resource, protecting the data that sits within that environment. So we want to be thinking about information protection, particularly things like, if you're using Office 365, there's lots of inbuilt capabilities to enable data classification, to prevent sharing of data, and to prevent loss of that data through emails, etc. In addition, we want to be thinking about that threat intelligence, that threat protection, and endpoint protection is really critical. And this is where all of that Microsoft intelligence enablement comes into play. So if we do start seeing that anomalous behavior, we really want to be thinking about how do we automate as much of those processes as possible, so we alleviate the issues that some of your security departments or security operations centers may be having in terms of controlling and managing access to corporate resources. And I think really, just to look ahead, what happens next? So for many companies, many countries, we're still very much in crisis management mode. I think we see USA, Brazil, India, many African nations, they still haven't reached the peak. So with this crisis mode, we're still going to play out for quite a while. But even on top of that, even while we're thinking in this crisis mode, many companies and governments and organizations are already rethinking their strategy for the future. And in essence, they're kind of thinking about this new hybrid model. They're accelerating their digital transformation, and they're really rethinking all of that capability right now. So we've got crisis management mode, we've got transformation all going on at the same time. But on top of that, over the next 5 to 10 years, we estimate that over half of all global data will be sat in cloud environments. So that's private cloud, public cloud, social media. We reckon it's 100 zettabytes of data that's going to be sat in that environment. So just to put that into perspective, 1 zettabyte is 1 billion terabytes. So that data is going to continue to grow and to continue to add more complexities. And it's not just the data, as we said, we've got data about data. So we've got telemetry data, we've got audit data, and all of those things that we have to collect and analyze. And as more people and countries adopt 5G, that the speed accelerates, that ability to have this and ability to have those users work from anywhere at any time just gets bigger. We're seeing an explosion of IoT, and over the next few years, we're going to see more with regards to robotics, artificial intelligence, and all of those things, and also enabling as much biometrics and all combined as possible. So really, what we're talking about is, things are probably going to get worse before they get better. But it's really exciting time. It's really something that we're thinking about with all of our customers, about how do we enable all of that transformation and all of that capability. So really just where I want to end really is, how do we chart that resilient course? And the main point really of all of this is we're in this together. I mean, this incident really, if you call it a crisis on a global scale, it's just really brought home the fact that we are all digitally connected in one way or another, through our supply chains, through our relationships, through our families, and all of those things. And really, what does resilient really mean is we can't prevent every single incident. What we have to do is preempt what's coming, what's on the horizon, and be available. So not only do we need to be secure, we need to be resilient, we need to be as productive as possible, and work together, lean on your suppliers, lean on your vendors, and work together to enable us to be as resilient as possible. And David, I'd really like to open the conversation up to your audience now for any questions.
Sarah, that's tremendous. Thank you. We do have a chat line. There's a question that's just coming through right now. So let me ask that of you if I can, Sarah. Thanks so much for an informative session. The question is regarding security policies have had reputations on controlling and limiting as opposed to enabling. Are you as a CISO rethinking their roles in business that you're engaging with during this COVID period?
Absolutely. I mean, I think what we're sort of seeing is that security is really a business enabler. So as we talked about, if you have all of these layers and layers of security, it prevents people from being productive. And what we see is if people aren't able to use their resources and get access to their data, they will look for workarounds, and that introduces more risk. So if they're not utilizing the devices you provided, the data and the resources, they will look for workarounds. So everything that we're talking about, we very much believe in resilience, security, privacy by design from the outset. But also, that's a really important point that we were talking about with policies and controls, because a lot of the things that we've been talking about is from an on-prem environment. So what actually we got to think about, what changes, what enablement do we need to have to enable us to work in this much more remote, much more online environment that we're now actually all moving towards. So it's really, really critical area.
Indeed it is. Sarah, you've given us a wonderful address, and again, it is just now, 25 minutes on from where we were just after 7 a little while ago. Really appreciate you doing that. I think all the aspects and the insights you've given us on operational resilience and ways to ensure to avoid major digital disruption has been fantastic. I think the analogy of security and resilience and working together is actually an interesting metaphor for COVID at the moment, right? It's it applies to so many parts of what's going on around society. So there is one other quick question that's just popped in. This is, if you don't mind, just the last one. We've seen a massive adoption of cloud in panic. Is it too late for the architecture to be locked down? It's a good question.
Well, I think it's what we're really seeing is what's the level of enablement required. So we've seen a massive amounts of cloud adoption, but what we're seeing is this hybrid model. So I think for in the short term at least, we're going to see some companies who are really thinking about what does this model need to look like going forward. So there's going to be that mix of on-prem, there's going to be a mix of cloud. And really, each company's different, but it's about how do we enable all of those things combined. And I think that I think there's still some companies that are a little bit hesitant of the cloud, and that's totally fine. And they're having to reimagine all of these things simultaneously. And what does that really mean, not just for their business, but for their customers and that whole global supply chain? So really, our job as Microsoft, as a service provider and a cloud provider, for example, is to listen, to all of these things and help our customers adopt cloud and enable digital transformation as effectively and efficiently as possible, no matter what that means for that customer. As we sort of said, it's all different, but it's no matter what we're talking about, it's as we sort of alluded to, it's about having that resilient foundation. And when you're using cloud providers and those type of services, it's a shared responsibility. So I think what we're really saying is you're not having to think about this alone. So, we've got all of those lessons learned and capabilities. We can bring what's going on in your sector, what's going on across different countries, what's new, and all of these things that customers can build upon, really. And that's something that it's constantly evolving all the time.
Yeah. There's an interesting question here, Sarah, with regards to the role of facial recognition that could help play or help organisations and secure remote and bringing your own devices. So it's I guess there's so much technological advancement at present. There's so much technology that's challenging the norms of society, and
Yeah.
I think we're all embracing each of those elements. And you know, some of your insights today around the importance of secure networks that actually allow people to feel safe and secure in their own work environment, or where they live, work, or play, to be fair, have provided great insights for people. You will be available in a moment with one of your colleagues, Abbas, in the networking lounge. And again, if you go up into the toolbar, if anyone would like to talk to Sarah, she'll be available for a short time with one of her local colleagues here in Australia. All you need to do is click on Meet the Speakers and you can commence that chat. What I would do is I would ask people to take just a moment to, as the poll comes up, I don't know, for people who have, this is the first time that you might have joined us today, there is a quick poll that's appearing on your screen now. 3 quick questions. Ranking 0 to 5. Did you value today's presentation? I now know I'm more informed about the subject matter and I'd like to know more about this subject. So just tick the box there. And we will give people an instant poll on people's view on that. Sarah, what's the weather like in London today?
It's still a bit early. I'm expecting a little bit more sun today. It's typical Britain, though, I might say, so it could be anything.
Right, okay, fantastic. Well, look, here's the poll responses, Sarah, to your presentation. I think, not surprising at all, did the presentation add value to the day? Look, the vast majority, 90%, have said absolutely it did. And when you look at, am I more informed about this particular subject matter, again, 4s and 5s, which is well over 90%, which is fantastic. And I think people's desire to know more about this, you know, nearly 80% of people want to know more about it. I think it's just such an area of growth and development. We're all understanding a lot more. I know you as a leading world authority, working for such a global giant like Microsoft, will bring so much insight to so many people. So look, thank you very much for your time today, Sarah. We really do appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you can just stop sharing your video and click out of your presentation. I'm just going to wrap things up here today for everyone who's still online. There's a number of people who are still online. It does bring to an end our inaugural presentation today, our inaugural Immersion Plus. Look, I want to thank everyone who's been part of today. We have attempted to bring humanity and technology together to inform, to educate, to promote, to provoke discussion, and to make our way through these times of change and disruption. All the live sessions that have appeared from early this morning all the way through to Sarah's just now will be available in a number of days on this platform. Together with all the exhibits, the online exhibits, will also be available for up to 3 months, plus all the on-demand Let's Talk sessions. So they're all available. I'd really invite you to, particularly if you know people who might value from some of those presentations, to invite them in. I want to thank the many contributors, the partners, the sponsors who have joined us today, the Let's Talk speakers who have prepared their content really diligently and have given us such compelling content on so many varied topic matters, and particularly the areas within the exhibits. There's so much content and video that's been developed for those particular exhibits, and we thank them very, very much. I'd also like to personally thank 2 members of the marketing team, Kylie Smith and Lauren Brown, who have committed just endless hours to facilitate and produce Immersion Plus, but they've done it with an unbelievable marketing team in support. And each of those people who have shared their skills and shared their professionalism to produce what is an inaugural virtual conference for NEC Australia. So I want to thank people. Please click back into Immersion Plus anytime. We'll be actually sending out more insights and information about the Immersion Plus Club in the coming days, and giving you really interesting offers to keep connected with NEC Australia. Thanks very much for joining us. Goodbye.